If you thought question 3 was tricky, let me introduce you to the AQA GCSE English Language Paper 1 final boss, question 4. This one's a monster, based on evaluation, not just analysis, and it's where students either level up or completely destroy their chances of getting a top grade for the reading section of the paper. But not you, me. Because by the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to approach this question, what structure to use, and how to write grade 9 evaluation essays that impress all examiners. If you're wondering who the heck I am, I'm Sam. I've been an English tutor at Strong Students for 4 years, where I team up with my brother Josh to help ambitious students master maths, English, and studying. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications, mate, if that sounds up your alley. Right, let's dive into question 4 and break it down by the dinosaur style. So first things first, what do we actually need to do for question 4? Well, this question is worth 20 marks, which is about 25% of the entire paper, meaning you'll spend around 25 minutes on it. Now, the question asks you to what extent you agree or disagree with a given interpretation of part of the text. Here's an example question. Focus this part of your answer on the second part of the source from line 20 to the end. The sniper is presented as a cold and ruthless character here. He clearly feels no guilt ending lives. To what extent do you agree or disagree with this statement? In your response, you could consider your impressions of the sniper's actions, comment on the methods the writer uses to present the sniper as cold and ruthless, and support your response with references to the text. 20 marks. So here, we're being asked about the extent to which we agree that the sniper is a cold and ruthless character from line 20 to the end, and that he clearly feels no guilt ending lives. Now, if you're wondering which lines and what extract I'm referring to here, I'm talking about the source from the previous 2 English Language Paper 1 videos. So if you haven't downloaded it already, it's linked in the description below, alongside all the practice questions, including 1, 2, and 3. So definitely give that a download before continuing with this video. Now, all the marks for this question are AO4. Therefore, we can't just analyse language for this question and write PEA paragraphs like we did for question 2. Instead, we need to do what's called evaluation. Now, evaluation is just the skill of making a judgment of something. So it's stating an opinion, supporting it with evidence, and then explaining how that evidence supports your initial judgment. So, for example, if I was to evaluate how healthy my dinner from last night was, I would begin by stating my opinion that it is healthy because it is really high in a lot of micronutrients. Then I would support it with evidence, such as the piece of salmon meat on my plate. And then I would explain how this salmon contains vitamins B12, vitamin D, selenium, as well as minerals like phosphorus, potassium, and iodine. Now, the most effective way to signal to an examiner that you're evaluating isn't to whip out a fillet of salmon. Instead, you need to use evaluative keywords, which are essentially just words that display critical engagement. They show you're evaluating. Now, an acronym that I've taught for a while is IMPACTS, which stands for insightfully, masterfully, powerfully, artfully, compellingly, tactfully, successfully. But these are just a few. Some other words my students have gotten on well with include effectively, significantly, importantly, crucially, pivotally, perceptively, convincingly. Take your pick. I'd recommend learning just at least 5 because they're really going to help you with this question when you can plug them into your paragraphs to show the skill of evaluation. Now, to demonstrate the importance of these keywords, I want you to consider the following extract from a student's response to the previous question. The verb phrase strip away makes it seem like the sniper is almost emotionally numb, perfectly willing to reduce human beings to targets. This is clear and focused on describing the interpretation and the meaning of the verb phrase strip away. So in terms of analysis, it's really good, but it doesn't assess the effectiveness of the writer's methods and link those methods back to the statement that he is cold and ruthless. So let's now consider this revised version. The verb phrase strip away tactfully frames the sniper as emotionally numb, perfectly willing to reduce human beings to targets, successfully reinforcing the idea that he is indeed a ruthless individual as he senselessly depersonalizes those in his crosshairs. We can see that this specific extract uses two evaluative keywords, tactfully and successfully, and explicitly links the writer's methods to the original statement, highlighting a clear sense of agreement. And that is how you evaluate. So, to ensure that you're evaluating consistently throughout your response, I want you to use a slightly modified version of the PEA structure that I've been teaching for the past few months to you on YouTube. As usual, you're going to start with a point and support it with evidence, but for your analysis, so when you explain and explore your evidence, you're going to do two additional things. Number one, you're going to use your evaluative keywords. And number two, you're going to link back to the statement and prove how your analysis reinforces your point. So bearing this in mind, let's now cover the strategy for answering this question in full and break it down step by step. So for question 4, I want you to follow a 3-step strategy. Step 1, you're going to highlight the hooks in the statement. By hooks here, I'm referring to the ideas you're going to evaluate in your response. So for example, in our sample question, the statement says that the sniper is a cold and ruthless character who clearly feels no guilt ending lives. So there are two hooks in here, aren't there? The sniper is cold and ruthless, and that he feels no guilt ending lives. Now that we've broken our statement down, we can move on to step 2. We're going to pick out some evidence to use in our paragraphs. Now, I'd recommend 1 to 2 quotes for each hook. If you only get a single hook, which is very unlikely, there's usually 2, then I want you to aim for 3 quotes for the single hook you've been given. The quotes you find will essentially be used as your support for the opinions you put forward, so whether you agree or disagree with the claim and why. Now, although you can argue whatever you want, it's much easier to strongly agree or disagree with the statement and select evidence that would support strong agreement or disagreement. Now, this is because the statement is usually worded in a way that encourages agreement or disagreement. So, for example, in the sample question we've been given, the statement is just really easy to agree with. I don't know about you, mate, but I certainly wouldn't want to be in the scope of that sniper. So to make your life easy, you should mostly select evidence to support one main viewpoint, agree or disagree. But if you get 2 hooks, you might agree or disagree to a larger extent with one than the other. So feel free to bring in some alternative arguments to nuance your agreement or disagreement. Just make sure that you can support them with evidence and analysis. So if you pick a disagreement, make sure you can support it. Likewise for agreement. So applying this to the sample question, let's say that we are going to strongly agree with a statement. Now the evidence we choose simply needs to support this viewpoint, although we could sprinkle in a little bit of disagreement if we can see some good examples. So for the first hook, a good quote would be a series of movements, patterns, and vulnerabilities. This strips away any personal identity from the man he's preparing to kill, which insightfully emphasizes his mental conditioning. Definitely shows he's ruthless and cold. For the second hook, we could reference how the sniper's heartbeat remains steady, each thud measured and deliberate. This aligns the sniper's body with his mental state, calm, focused, and unyielding in his discipline. But there's one quote in here I think is really interesting. I don't know about you. His mind emptied. I think this is like a defense mechanism. So it's almost like the sniper is numbing himself to the reality of what he's about to do. So perhaps we could use this to nuance my main argument, that I agree, and show a little bit of disagreement that he does have a personal side. And now that we've got our evidence and ideas sorted, it's time for the final step, to turn them into evaluative paragraphs. As we saw earlier, these paragraphs are going to follow a slightly modified version of the PEA structure, leveraging evaluative keywords to assess the writer's methods and link what we're saying back to the question. Let's now take a look at grade 9 response. To a great extent, the writer presents the sniper as cold and ruthless, particularly through his emotional detachment, methodical approach, and clinical execution of his task. However, There are subtle yet significant moments that imply he is not entirely immune to the emotional gravity of what he does, adding depth to his character. The writer powerfully conveys the sniper's dehumanization of his target, and therefore his coldness, when he describes the human being in his crosshairs as a series of movements, patterns, vulnerabilities. This strips away any personal identity from the man he is preparing to kill, which insightfully emphasizes the sniper's mental conditioning, as though he refuses to emotionally engage with the morality of his actions, tactfully relaying his mercilessness as an elite operator. Moreover, the asyndetic list creates a rhythm that mimics calculation and procedure. He is not preparing for an emotional or moral conflict, but for a task. This is an effective demonstration of how the writer crafts a character who appears to kill not out of passion or hatred, but out of duty and detached purpose, supporting the idea he is both cold and ruthless. This notion of the sniper as unwavering in his conviction is developed when he takes aim, yet his heartbeat remains steady, each thud measured and deliberate. This physical detail aligns the sniper's body with his mental state, calm, focused, and unyielding in his discipline, suggesting that he is not battling in a turmoil, but is instead fully in control of his emotions and body, underscoring his willingness to end lives and a lack of compassion for his targets. Indeed, the use of the adjectives measured and deliberate are crucial in conveying that he acts with precision and without panic or remorse. This composure is particularly striking given the high-stakes situation, allowing the reader to convincingly infer that his mental discipline contributes to his perceived ruthlessness. He does not flinch or pause and proceeds with an assassin's calm, which effectively underscores the view he feels no guilt ending lives. However, the writer subtly introduces emotional complexity, suggesting this kill may carry weight for the sniper, representing a small chink in his stoic armor. Indeed, before he takes the shot, the sniper empties his mind. While this might signal focus, the verb empties can also be seen as a defensive mechanism, a deliberate act of numbing himself to the reality of what he is about to do. This idea thus challenges the absolute view he is cold and ruthless. Instead, the writer quietly presents him as a human being performing an inhuman task, a man who must silence emotion in order to survive, creating tension between duty and conscience. Now, this response is really good for a few reasons. I'm going to show you what I mean by breaking down just the first paragraph. So, firstly, look at the number of evaluative keywords that are being used. This signals to the examiner that we haven't analysed but rather evaluated in detail. Moreover, notice how the analysis is used to support an evaluative judgment. For example, we don't just say that the description of the sniper's target as a series of movements, patterns, vulnerabilities strips away any personal identity from the man he's preparing to kill and leave it there. Instead, we say that this stripping insightfully emphasizes the sniper's mental conditioning, which tactfully relays his mercilessness as an elite operator. We're linking back to our original viewpoint. So, what is the formula for question 4 then? We're going to start by breaking down the statement into hooks. Then we're going to grab 1 to 2 powerful quotes for each hook, or 3 if there's one hook. We're then going to build 3 critical PEA paragraphs using evaluative keywords, and we're going to connect the analysis of language and structure to the original argument. Do that, and you've got your ticket to the top band. Now, if you've made it this far, you're already miles ahead of most students. But if you want to get a grade 7, 8, or 9, then you'll need to also have nailed questions 1, 2, and 3. I've made videos that will help you get full marks in less than 15 minutes for all of these questions. Make sure to give them a watch if you haven't already and would like to accelerate your grades in English. Otherwise, stay strong. I'll see you in the next video.